Alright guys, so as I promised before, we're going to be going over some HUD stats, and this is going to be a few examples of breaking down some HUD stats of different type of villains, um, deciphering, getting through them, understanding what adjustments we need to make, how we can exploit these type of players, and you could treat this like a quiz where you want to freeze it up and, take a second to look for yourself before I get started here, and then I'll go on. Now, I didn't break down all of the stats, just the big ones that we see, because one of the big things with HUC and Goes is being able to see your HUD stats, process them, definitely with multi-tabling, and then turning them into good notes where you can exploit them in the long run, right? Until they adapt anyways. So this is a spot where let's take a look at the HUD stats real quick. We got a guy who's not opening that wide, but he is limping, so it looks like he's trapping a little bit as well, so maybe he's running some sort of limping strategy himself. Once again, out of position here, 3-bet shoving quite a bit. VPIP is pretty wide, flatting a good amount. Out of position, nothing too crazy, not check raising that much. C-betting a lot of flops and a lot of turns, but kind of giving up on rivers and ISOing a little bit as well. So why don't we go through, give you guys a second to decipher them yourselves, and we're going to go down and figure out the big ones, the big leaks that this guy might have in his game. So let's get started here. So right off the bat, let's see here. So as you see, under the fold to limp c-bet here, he is folding 46% of the time, which is something that we want to keep an eye on, right? So we go over here to isolations, and, he's ISO shoving quite a bit, as we get later. But right around here, it's still a little passive. Maybe we want a bigger sample size, but we've got plenty of hands on them. So this is something we can keep an eye on as well. If somebody is this passive with limp c-bets, we can definitely exploit him here. So I think this is something we'd want to add to our game plan. If it's using our limp strategy versus guy, thinking about maybe playing our bottom 10-15% and reevaluating, it's going to be very important. Next, let's see what happens. Alright, so we get fold to c-bet here, and as we see, this could very easily be a guy who, calls really light, right? He might be your typical calling station here, where, once again, he is calling really wide, pre-flop. Well, not really wide, but a good amount. And he's folding to a lot of c-bets here and there, but not quite 50%, so we really want to keep an eye on that still. But when the turns come around, and then when the river comes, he's just not really folding at all. So here you want to keep an eye on what he's calling down with. Is he calling down too late? Is he calling down in correct spots like a reg should be, where, we're barreling in good barreling opportunities, and he's understanding that, so is this guy a good thinking player? Or is he just your typical recreational? So we definitely want to keep an eye on that, and maybe make a note with a question mark saying, calling station or good hand reader, and we want to basically develop those reads in the long run. Definitely if you're going to be playing this guy quite a bit, right? Next, we got probing here. So he's only probing 35% of the time. So this guy isn't going to be a good candidate when we're talking about a well-balanced check-back range, right? Because when we're talking about well-balanced check-back ranges, we're talking about top pairs and middle pairs and some air, but if he's not attacking us when we're checking back top pairs, what's the point of trapping him, right? There's really no point. We should just c-bet those hands and go on from there. This might be a good stat to understand that this guy maybe isn't a good reg, maybe he's a bad reg or a recreational, because a lot of regs are going to be aggressive in these spots. But once again, checking back a well-balanced range maybe isn't the best idea versus kind of guy. And those are the type of things you want to be looking for as well, because maybe the strategy you're using for some guys just isn't right. We want to be exploitable in different facets of the game. And last but not least on this HUD is his overall fold versus all-in isolations. So yes, he's limping 63% and he's, opening 31%. So he's playing about 90% of his range, a little bit more than that. But he's only limp trapping 5% of the time over a big sample, but he's folding 90% of the time when we shove. So even though he's not limp folding when we're ISOing non-all in, he's folding a lot when we're ISOing all in. So we might want to make that adjustment with a lot of our hands, like, 9-7 and 5-7 and all those hands we can just shove because he's folding way too wide. And then when we have some bigger value, you might want to think about maybe checking back and not isolating those hands because he is folding so much when he does limp. So even though there's probably going to be some traps in his range, we have to understand that is his opening range consisted strictly of value? Is it balanced? Is his limping range balanced? So we want to keep an eye on that, but at the same time we can definitely exploit him with this stat right here.